Egypt. He spent 40 years with the guy. Married his daughter. So there's been quite an influence there. And now Moses, God's man, is taking counsel from Jethro. But you see the things he's saying there. He's saying, you can't do this. He's talking about the civil government here, is what he's talking about. He's talking about, Moses is saying, they bring me the things that are arguing with them, and then I tell them what God's law is, thou shalt not kill. Come on. And then I bring civil laws in order to explain how we accomplish thou shalt not kill. Because you're coming to me saying, oh, Fred's made me mad enough, I'm going to cut his throat. We already had that situation back with Cain and Abel, remember? His brother made him mad enough, he could, hit him in the head. We don't know what he did. He killed him, buried him in the ground. The Lord said, his blood cries out to me. See, we can't hide these things from God. They knew it was wrong. What'd he say? He said, where's your brother? Well, am I thy brother's keeper? Well, what's he doing? He's defending himself. He's already defensive because he knows he's done something wrong. There was no 10 commandments then, was there, when Cain and Abel were running around? We just freshly got thrown out of the garden. This is the first generation, huh? God never said, thou shalt not kill. In fact, before they left the garden, God had killed an animal and covered their sins with the coats and stuff. So he had actually killed something. So death had entered in. Come on. So what would be the difference between killing that sheep and me killing my brother? He made me mad and I'm, away with him. Well, the difference is thy brother. The human race is all of one blood. Cicero, he said that the ability to reason and rightly deduct through our knowledge and our wisdom is only attributed to man and is only shared with God and man. Therefore, we are the ones that are responsible. See, this is where we come into responsibility and duty. This is what we've lost in our country. Everybody says, oh, I have the right. Yeah, you have the right. But you also have the duty to your fellow man not to violate his right. Cicero also said that if a man be drunk in his own home and he is in abbreviation of his behavior, there can be no law against that, for there can be no knowledge of it. So what's he saying? He's saying if you go home and you want to do something that would be unacceptable in public, in the privacy of your own home, there can be no violation or law restraining that because it is the privacy of your own home. This is where we come into the right to have our own privacy. See, I forgot to read again the First Amendment. Let me read this right quick because this is the basis of everything that we have our founding on in our land. And all of these 5 precepts, a lot of people don't realize there are 5 precepts in the First Amendment. And all 5 of these precepts are based upon what we're talking about today. The First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free expression thereof, or arbitrating the freedom of speech or of its press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, arbitrating there means, by Webster's dictionary, shortening, lessening, or debauching. So if you can decrease the right to speech in any way, you're violating it. You're treading on it. Why do we have these things? Because these are all aspects of man's natural law, see? These are responsibilities or rights that we have inherited by God himself as all of us together. Not just in this country. See, this is where we've lost sight. These things don't just apply to us. Yes, they do through our Constitution, and we have this law that we have written by the civic government, which is doing what? It's supporting the natural law. See, the natural law, Cicero said, these are laws that God has put in place to all man. That's the reason why when they wrote the preamble to the Constitution, it said, these are the evident or the inalienable rights given by God. See, they understood that. And as we would understand that as individuals, we would walk in a place of harmony with one another, and we would continue to grow and prosper, not only as a society and a moral and solid people, but as a prosperous and safe people. Because they all hinge upon one and another. We have to walk in that place where the morality is upheld continually, and the forefathers knew the only way that would happen is for the church to be completely separate from the civil government. And they recognized that the authority of the church was actually over the authority of the civil government. This is where you get the conflict in today's world. Those of you that are listening to this by the radio, I'm sure you're just boiling right about now because I'm stepping on your sacred cows. But that's okay. We have to get back to reality, because if we go to where we was talking about earlier, the 1 Kings chapter, the last part of chapter 12 and chapter 13, we see the sin of Jeroboam. And the sin of Jeroboam was not one of those heinous moral issues or things like we see in a lot of the aspects, but it led up to that. The sin of Jeroboam was he put the high priests in a house that were not of Levites. That's why I put this verse up here. 1 Kings 12:31, it says, "And he made a house of the high places and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi." See, today we have this mental facility going on in our society that we're all equal and we all should be in this same place, you know, and because we all have these rights, and then we should all be the same, and we ought to treat everybody the same. That's not right. If we read those ancient philosophers, they even said that just because we all have the same rights doesn't make us equal in opportunity or ability or wealth. See? And God set up the Levitical priesthood. If you go back into Genesis and you read where Moses came down from the mountain, what was the first thing he did? God said, first of all, he took Moses to the heavenly places. I preach this all the time on the authority of the blood of Christ. And he showed him the patterns of the articles of worship in heaven, didn't he? And what was the very first thing Moses set in order after he came down from the mountain? The Levitical priesthood. He gave orders on how to manufacture the tent. God told him, you get not only the craftsmen, but the masters of the crafts. I want the best of the best. And you get them to make these curtains. You get them to forge these articles of worship. You get them to make these bowls of gold. You get them to fashion the altar. You get them to build all of these things and institute the Levitical priesthood. God set Levi as the head of the Levitical priesthood, not Moses. God said, Levi, you get Levi. And the Levitical priesthood was there to advise Moses. Now, what I noticed this week that I've never noticed before is from that moment forward, when Moses instituted the Levitical priesthood and they got all of that set in order, there began to be a separation between the Levitical priesthood, or what we can call the church today, and the civic duties of the law or rule of society. And this situation with Jethro is one of the distinguishing moments when that separation became to be more evident than ever before. Because like Jethro said, you, Moses, you need to go and hear the voice of God. You need to delegate this authority. And they broke it up into tiers of people. And then all of those episodes that took place in that period of time is where our founding fathers got the format for our government we have today. The church had no involvement in that, other than Moses was the go-between, if you will, between the Levitical priesthood and the headship of the civic government. See, we have two duties as men and women in our society. We have a civic duty to our fellow man, and we have a moral duty to our Creator. We have confused the two to where we spend all of our time going around doing all of our civic activities, and we think somehow that's impressing God when we are neglecting our moral duty to the supreme ruler. Because like that obituary, I mean, I hate to start a service off on such a negative note like that, but it works perfect into what we're saying, because in that, like that statement was made in that obituary, whoever wrote that was just, I mean, bluntly to the truth, to the point of the matter. This soul has departed and entered into the judgment. He's not condemning her anywhere. He doesn't make a statement as to her eternal place. He makes a statement as to the state of our civic society. But he says she has departed to be judged. That's what Cicero said. We all have an obligation to live with what he says are concern for another, which what does Jesus say? The greatest commandment is all is to love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy mind and all thy soul. And the second hinges on this, is to love thy neighbor as thyself. Because if we are doing that right there, then we are fulfilling our obligation to God, and we are fulfilling our obligation to our society as a whole. Because we will automatically conform to the laws of God, thou shalt not kill, without civic law that says you shouldn't be doing that. See? And we will automatically look for the better of our fellow man rather than exalting ourselves. I've said 100 times that to lay your life down for your brother, there's no greater love than that. The Bible says it's not talking about jumping in front of a bullet. It's talking about suffering reproach and harm and downgrading or any kind of insult or anything that's unpleasant to you for the good of another. That on a daily basis, continually. That's what that's talking about. Kind of like a marriage. Huh? You let your wives beat up on you all the time, fathers? Huh? Let them think they're right and tell you you're wrong. Huh? Oh, I know. I got to eat today too. You guys, I'm telling you, what a hard bunch. Can't even have fun. This life is an endurance competition. He who endures to the end wins. Right, Bill? Amen. Yeah, I'll be the last dog standing. Woohoo! Jethro, see, you know, I've made the statement before that I thought I was a lot like Amos. I didn't realize how much like Amos I was until this week. Because if you go and read Amos, you find that he was talking to Jeroboam, this king who set these people up. Now you say, well, what was the problem with him setting these folks up? These are just the average folks, you know, and they deserve to be exalted too. I mean, this is what we would hear in our today's society. They're just, you know, they're just as good a people as anybody else. They ain't no, you know, that president of the United States ain't no better than the common guy out here. Why can't he be president? Huh? These guys can be the Levite priest. We'll put them in there. Well, if you read this section where we were, let me see if I can find it here. He said in that 31st verse, the 33rd verse, it says, so he offered upon the altar which he had made in Bethel 15 day in the 8th month, even the month that which he had devised of his own heart, for ordained the rest unto the children of Israel, and he offered upon the altar the burnt incense. And there's another place where he said he set up his place of worship. He set up his divine priests. They weren't the priests of God. You say, well, what's the problem? Well, Jeroboam was a representation of the head of civil government. He was the king. Are you following me? The Levitical priesthood was and always has been the symbol of God's authority. The moral compass, if you will. Our shoring, our mooring, our anchor that holds us stable, keeps us sure. The forefathers said the only way that our country would survive is that a free and moral people elect moral leaders. They knew the only way that a free people would remain moral is by having the church holding their fat to the fire. I know we don't like that, but that's what we need. Well, folks, we're going to break in right here, and we'll conclude this message in part 2B episode. There again, these are pre-recorded lessons that we did back, I believe it was 2016. We really hope you're